What is life really like for a hitman inside a Mexican cartel? Not the version shown in TV series, not the one sung in corridos. Here, there is no constant luxury or eternal loyalty. There is fear, orders that cannot be questioned, and a very thin line between staying alive or disappearing. Today, we're going to step into a world that almost no one leaves unchanged, to understand how recruits are drawn in, what daily life looks like, and why, in many cases, the ending is written from day one. Welcome to Cartel, the root of the problem. In many cases, young people do not enter organized crime through a free choice, but rather through a combination of promises and pressures that are carefully constructed. Cartels often present themselves as a fast track to money and abundance, offering immediate cash, status, and an identity that creates a sense of belonging. For those who grow up surrounded by poverty, limited job opportunities, and the absence of the state, these promises can be especially persuasive. On top of that, lack of education is another determining factor that makes many fall into these criminal networks. The narrative of easy money is one of the most effective tools. The benefits are exaggerated, while the real costs are hidden: constant violence, loss of freedom, and a high probability of dying young. At the beginning, many receive payments that exceed any legal salary available in their environment, reinforcing the idea that the risk is worth it. But that apparent prosperity is usually temporary. Over time, internal debts, fines, and the impossibility of leaving the organization turn that supposed wealth into a form of control. By the time the idea of quitting crosses their mind, it is already too late. They have multiple enemies, and leaving would put their loved ones at risk. Not everyone joins by choice. There are documented cases of forced recruitment or fake job offers, especially in rural areas or communities under cartel control. Young people are coerced under direct threats against them or their families. Once inside, leaving is not an option. Desertion is often paid with life. The root of the problem is structural. Organized crime feeds on social inequality, fragile education systems, poorly paid jobs, and a normalization of violence passed down from generation to generation. When the state fails to guarantee security, justice, or social mobility, cartels fill that vacuum by offering what appears to be order, protection, and economic support. More than an individual phenomenon, the role of the hitman is the result of an environment that pushes thousands of young people toward what seems like the only visible alternative. Understanding this does not justify the actions, but it does help explain that behind every weapon, there is a story shaped by deprivation, manipulation, and a promise that almost never comes true. A clear example of this was the Tuchitlan Ranch, discovered in Mexico last year. It was allegedly used by the Jalisco New Generation Cartel to recruit large numbers of people through false job offers. It was also reportedly used as a place to make people disappear if they refused, a site that operated for a long time without intervention from authorities. Cultural influence. Cultural influence is silent but constant. Recruitment does not always happen through threats. Sometimes people arrive on their own, motivated by a media wave that popularized only one side of the story, a side that most will never even get close to experiencing. The genre of narco corridos builds a narrative where the drug trafficker is portrayed as a symbol of respect, power, and social mobility. Lyrics speak of money, women, weapons, and loyalty, but they stay silent about what really matters: permanent fear, internal distrust, and the certainty of a violent ending. They never tell what happens after the song ends. They only show a moment of supposed glory, one that very few ever reach, and even fewer manage to maintain. Within that same narrative, certain figures appear who, for a time, seemed untouchable. Names like El Chino Antrax, El Nini, El Chapo, and other visible operators become symbols, not because of what they truly represented, but because of how they were portrayed. Bodyguards, luxury, proximity to power, presence on social media. For many young people, that doesn't look like crime. It looks like success. What is rarely emphasized is that these figures ended up isolated, betrayed, captured, or dead. That inside a cartel there are no long careers, only constant replacements. But that ending does not sell. It is not sung, and it does not go viral like the image of a millionaire gangster living among excess. Narco culture functions as an extension of the criminal system itself. It fills the void left by a lack of opportunities, real role models, and future expectations. Crime stops being seen as a warning and starts being seen as an option, and by the time reality hits, there is no turning back. The case of El Ponchis. Another case that exposes this reality is that of Edgar Jimenez Lugo, known as El Ponchis. More than 10 years ago, he shocked the world when he was presented as the so-called child hitman. He was only 14 years old at the time. He later described how he was recruited and, in a cold manner, confessed to several of his crimes. And like him, there are countless cases of young people who have testified that life inside a cartel is nothing like it is portrayed. Living conditions. At this point, some of the images shown come from the channel Popular Front. Personally, I want to highlight their work because rarely has a documentary shown such a raw portrayal of how things really happen from the inside. Another harsh reality is the lifestyle itself. Far from the luxurious image that some criminals boast about on social media, those privileges are reserved for very few, and as mentioned before, even fewer stay alive long enough to enjoy them. The vast majority who aspire to become part of this world remain in the mountains, living under extremely precarious conditions. As shown in Popular Front's documentaries, many spend days walking, get sick due to lack of hygiene, suffer exhaustion, and survive extreme conditions, hunger, cold, and constant anxiety. Not everything that shines is gold, and at this stage, almost no one manages to get out. In many videos circulating on social media, the places where they stay are visible. Improvised shelters, poor sleeping conditions, and food that consists mostly of canned or pre-cooked meals. Several reports indicate that their pay has declined over the years. The so-called war on drugs has created an environment of exploitation for those constantly exposed to this lifestyle. Today, a hitman may earn between $350 and $2,000 a month, depending on their rank and importance. Those stationed in the mountains usually endure the worst conditions and earn the least. In some cases, they are paid whatever their superiors decide.
Albañiles, carpinteros, mecánicos, guardias de seguridad de antros, había licenciados.
Irreversible damage. Beyond the obvious risk of death or arrest, life as a hitman involves constant exposure to damage that is rarely discussed, and that permanently marks those who enter this world, even if they survive. One of the first costs is the complete loss of personal freedom. Even outside prison, many live under internal surveillance, imposed schedules, forced movements, constant relocation, and the inability to say no. Obedience is not a moral choice. It is a condition for staying alive. There is also permanent psychological violence. Trust does not exist. The same people who share meals today can become executioners tomorrow. Paranoia is not an exaggeration. It is a survival mechanism. Sleeping armed, reacting to every noise, assuming someone is always watching, this becomes normal. Emotional deterioration follows. Many are exposed at a very young age to extreme situations that lead to desensitization, suppressed guilt, or deep emotional breakdowns. Substance use is not always recreational. It is often a form of control or escape, a way to keep functioning. Families are not spared. Being a hitman puts parents, partners, and children at direct risk. Threats, forced displacement, and social isolation are common. Over time, many cut all ties to protect their loved ones, ending up completely alone. Another rarely discussed reality is that there is no retirement, there is no dignified exit, and no peaceful ending. Age does not bring stability, only replacement. When someone is no longer useful, they become a problem, and in this logic, problems are eliminated. When the full picture is considered, the contrast is brutal. The life of a hitman, far from a path of power and luxury, is a short and closed road designed to consume those who enter it. Promises of easy money, respect, and rapid advancement act as bait. But once inside, reality imposes rules with no exceptions. Obey, survive, and disappear when you are no longer useful. The figures once presented as symbols of success end up confirming the same truth. In organized crime, there are no glorious endings. Loyalty is fragile, power is borrowed, and time is always running out. The silence of these endings stands in contrast to the noise of the cultural propaganda that comes before them. With that, we conclude this episode here on Crater. Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.